Listen to me and listen hard. Avoidants don't ghost you. They don't disappear because you're not enough. They disappear because your presence threatens the illusion they live in. And let me tell you the truth no one's daring to say on this fake sugar-coated internet. Avoidants never come back unless you do this. You think they ghosted you because of something you did. You think maybe if you had said it differently, if you hadn't sent that message, if you had been more patient, more chill, more quiet, more perfect, maybe then they wouldn't have disappeared like a damn magician mid-act. Let me crack that illusion wide open. They didn't ghost you because you were too much. They ghosted you because you got too close. You reached a part of them they were never ready to face. You weren't too needy, you were too real. See, avoidants don't run because they don't feel something for you. They run because they feel everything, and it terrifies the hell out of them. They don't know how to handle emotional intensity. You made them feel like a mirror was being held up to their soul, and instead of facing it, they did what they always do, vanish. Because that's their safe place. Distance, disconnection, control. Don't you dare confuse silence for power. Avoidants weaponize silence like it's a shield, and sometimes like it's a sword. They pull away so you lean in. They give less so you give more. They withhold love like a twisted prize you have to prove yourself worthy of. And if you don't understand what's happening, you'll think the solution is to chase harder. You'll think that proving your loyalty, your devotion, your willingness to stick it out will earn their love. But let me slap you awake. You are not in a relationship. You are in a power struggle. Because every time you try harder, you confirm their core belief that love means losing your independence, that intimacy is a trap, that getting close equals getting hurt, and that they must always be in control to survive. Do you hear what I'm saying? They don't ghost you because of who you are. They ghost you because you threatened the very illusion they've spent their life protecting, that no one can touch them, that no one can reach them, that if they stay numb, they stay safe. But here's the kicker. They didn't expect you to get under their skin. You weren't supposed to mean that much. You weren't supposed to matter, but you did. And that terrified them more than heartbreak ever could, because now they feel exposed, vulnerable, weak. So what do? They cut the cord. Fast, cold, sharp, and they vanish into thin air like you were just a chapter, a pause, a phase. But deep down, they felt it. Don't let their silence convince you otherwise. Don't let their emotional shutdown convince you your value dropped. Their reaction is not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their emotional capacity. They ran not from your love, but from what your love exposed. And the sick part, they need you to keep chasing, because chasing means you're still under their spell. It tells them, I still need your approval. I still think you're the one. I still believe you get to decide my value. That's the invisible chain. That's how they keep you on emotional leash. And you maybe you don't see it yet, but you're running in circles trying to win back someone who couldn't even stay when you handed them your heart wrapped in gold. But now it's time to stop. Not out of bitterness, but out of revelation. Because the moment you realize they ghosted you to protect their illusion, not because you were unworthy, everything shifts. You stop blaming yourself. You stop asking, what did I do wrong? And you start asking, why the hell was I trying to make a home out of someone who only knows how to lock doors? Because what they fear most isn't your anger, it's your awakening. They fear the moment you wake up and realize their absence was a blessing in disguise. They fear the moment you stop reacting, stop texting, stop waiting, stop aching. They fear the moment you flip the script and go silent, not from pain, but from power. Let them feel that. Let them sit in the echo of their own emptiness. Let them wonder why your energy is no longer orbiting around them. Let them realize that your love was not something they can ghost and expect to find waiting at the door like a lost puppy. Because love isn't earned by avoiding it. Respect isn't built through silence. And real connection, that requires courage, the kind they never built. So no, they didn't ghost you because you weren't enough. They ghosted you because you were about to crack their mask open, because you were the first person who touched their core without even trying, and they ran from that. They always do until someone stops chasing. Let that someone be you, because when you stop feeding the illusion, when you stop handing out your worth like it's on sale, when you stop playing the role of understanding partner to someone who only understands avoidance, you become the one thing they can't ignore, a mirror they can't control. And that is when the power shifts. That is when they finally feel the silence, not as safety, but as loss. because now you're not waiting at the door anymore. You burned it down and built a palace instead. Let them knock, let them wonder, but don't you dare open it until they become someone who doesn't disappear when it gets real. Let that hit where it needs to. You want to know the truth they never told you? The raw, unfiltered truth that nobody dares to say because it might hurt? Well, good, because pain is the beginning of power. So sit with this, let it slap you clean across the face if it has to, because once you understand it, there's no going back. Every time you chase someone who avoids you, someone who withdraws the second things get real, someone who punishes you with distance, you are not trying to prove your love. You are proving something way darker. You are proving that they still own your worth, and they know it. They feel it in every text you send that gets no reply. They feel it in every moment you wait by your phone like it's a shrine. They feel it when you lower your standards, silence your needs, rewrite your truth just to stay in their orbit. They know you want them, but more than that, they know you need their validation like it's oxygen. And that's the exact moment they tighten their grip, not with affection, but with absence. You don't even realize what's happening because it feels like love. It feels like effort, like dedication, like patience. But let me scream it louder for the broken hearts in the back. Chasing is not loving. Chasing is bleeding, slowly, silently, and calling it hope. You chase because deep down you think their acceptance will fix what someone else broke. You think if this one finally chooses you, finally sees you, finally stays, you'll be enough. But the truth is, the longer you chase, the more they pull away. And not because they're scared of you, because they know they can, because they know you've handed them your power like it's a gift, when in reality, it's your identity. You've made them the judge of your worth, and that makes them a god in your eyes. They don't have to text you back. You'll still check. They don't have to say, I love you. You'll still feel butterflies when they like your post. They don't have to show up. You'll still be there. Just in case. Let that disgust you. Let that rattle something awake. Because here's what you forgot. People only chase when they believe something outside of themselves is the prize. But you are the damn prize. You are not a beggar at the gates of someone else's validation. You are not some stray soul hoping to be chosen. You are not built to prove yourself worthy to someone who isn't even emotionally present. You've been taught that love is earned through suffering. That the more you endure, the more it means. But that's not love. That's self-erasure. That's worshiping someone who only ever gave you crumbs and calling it a meal. And the craziest part? They're not even giving you anything new. You're addicted to the same cycle. They pull back, you pursue. They detach, you panic. They disappear, you lose sleep. They come back just enough to keep you spinning. You call that connection. It's not connection, it's control. And they've got it, because chasing is submission in disguise. It's saying, you get to decide when I feel enough. You get to control the pace, the depth, the direction. You get to disappear, and I'll still worship the ground you ghosted me on. You think if you hold on long enough, they'll see your worth, but they never will. Because the moment someone knows they can have you, no matter how little they give, they stop valuing you. You become background noise. You become an option. You become replaceable. And nothing should enrage you more than that. Because you're not replaceable, you just forgot who the hell you are. The second you chase, you become the seeker, and seekers always feel lesser. The avoidant feels this imbalance and uses it. Not always consciously, but effectively. You're proving to them that your self-esteem is up for grabs. That your peace is tied to their response, that your future is waiting on their decisions. And what do they do with that power? They withhold. They become colder. They act like your presence is an inconvenience. And you try harder, don't you? You send longer messages. You replay conversations. You wonder if maybe it's your fault, if maybe you just need to heal more. Maybe you are the problem. No. That voice in your head that tells you it's your fault for being too emotional, too expressive, too loving, that voice was trained by emotional starvation. And chasing them is your attempt to feed it. But it never gets full. Because what you're hungry for is not them. It's the part of you that gave yourself up just to be seen. That's the addiction. That's the reason you keep going back. Not because you love them, but because you stopped loving you. You want to know what happens when you stop chasing? You break the cycle. You unplug the power cord they've been feeding off. You stop being their emotional battery and start becoming your own source. And here's the twisted beauty in it. The moment you stop proving your worth, they start noticing it. They start wondering why the silence isn't filled with your voice anymore, why the messages stopped, why the energy changed. And they feel the shift, not because you punished them, but because you rescued yourself. It was never about convincing them. It was always about remembering you don't need to be convinced. You are not someone to be earned by a person who only shows up when it's convenient. You are not someone who begs for attention in the desert of their inconsistency. You are someone who sets the damn standard and lets the unworthy disqualify themselves. Chasing only feels necessary when you forget you were born to be chosen by you first. And when you finally wake up and stop proving your worth to someone who never earned the right to hold it, that's when the game ends and you win. Let me tell you something that most people are too scared to admit, too numb to realize, and too attached to walk away from. Avoidants don't just avoid you. They feed off of you. They survive on the space you fill between their hot and cold behavior. Your love isn't just something they receive, it's their supply line. Your validation is their drug. And until you cut it off, they'll keep draining you without a shred of remorse. You think you're loving them. You think you're helping them open up. You think if you just stay calm, stay kind, stay patient, they'll finally realize you're different and they'll stay. But you're not being loving, you're being consumed. You're feeding a cycle that was designed to keep you chasing shadows and calling it destiny. Let me break this open so there's no room for illusions. Every time you try to soothe an avoidant, to make it easier for them to love you, to prove that you're safe, you're actually proving to them that you'll tolerate being emotionally starved. You are handing them your energy on a silver platter and asking them to please, maybe, one day, reciprocate. But they won't. Not while you keep giving. Because they don't need to. They're addicted to the distance, addicted to the silence, addicted to your reaction to their coldness. That's the high. That's the hit. You think they're neutral or detached. No. They're calculating, maybe not in some sinister villain kind of way, but in a survival mode, trauma-fueled, control-obsessed kind of way. They learned early that closeness equals danger. So what do? They dangle intimacy like bait, then snatch it back the second it starts to feel real. And every time they pull away and you chase harder, you're not getting closer. You're getting hooked deeper. You're not connecting with them. You're being conditioned by them. They train you to accept less and less love in exchange for more and more effort. They teach you to be satisfied with breadcrumbs and call it a feast. And the worst part, they make you believe it's your job to fix what they won't even admit is broken. Let that burn. Because it's not just about them disappearing when things get deep. It's about what happens inside you when they do. The panic, the confusion, the guilt. You start wondering what you did wrong. You start blaming yourself for pushing too hard, for being too emotional, for moving too fast. But the truth is you were just being real. You were showing up. You were offering something they don't know how to hold. And instead of saying that, they punish you with absence. That's what avoidants do. They withhold love. They withhold presence. They withhold closure. And when you react, when you reach out, explain, beg, apologize for things that weren't even your fault, they get what they need. Control, power, dominance over your peace. Because as long as you are chasing them, they are winning. They don't need to say a word. They just need to stay silent long enough for you to panic. And you will. You'll spiral. You'll start thinking about how to be less much, how to give them space, how to make it easier. Let me tell you exactly what they think when you do that. They don't think, wow, this person really loves me. They think, I still have them. And that is their addiction. Not you, not love, not connection, control. Their addiction is knowing that no matter how far they pull away, no matter how cold they go, no matter how little they offer, you'll still show up. You'll still be there apologizing for needing anything at all. You'll still call their withdrawal confusion instead of manipulation. And they'll keep taking hits of your devotion like it's heroin. Your love becomes their drug. Your loyalty becomes their escape route. Your presence becomes the leash they pull on whenever they want to feel significant without doing the work of being intimate. And you think this is a relationship, but it's not. It's a power imbalance masquerading as they just need time. You're not loving them, you're enabling them. You're feeding a system designed to keep you small, quiet, and available. But here's the thing they're not prepared for. Here's the move that shocks them out of their trance. You go no contact, not as a punishment, but as a detox. You stop being their emotional crutch. You stop giving them someone to bounce back to when they've drained every ounce of connection from themselves. You stop answering. You stop explaining. You stop hoping. And most of all, you stop bleeding for someone who never planned to give you blood back. That's the moment they feel it. Not your words, not your love, not your tears, your absence. That's the only language avoidants understand, not because they're monsters, but because they don't respect presence. They expect it, they feed off it, they assume it, and the only way to wake them the hell up is to remove the one thing they didn't believe they'd ever lose, your energy. Let that be the moment you reclaim your power, because when you go silent, not out of pain, but out of choice, they start to feel the hole you used to fill. They start to realize the texts aren't coming. The attention isn't guaranteed. The comfort is gone, not because they earned it, but because they drained it. And you begin to heal, not just from them, but from the part of you that believed love had to look like pain, from the part of you that thought self-abandonment was a form of compassion, from the part of you that settled for almost when your soul was built for all in. You're not cold for cutting off their supply. You're not cruel for walking away. You're not heartless for refusing to keep bleeding for someone who made you beg for basic care. You are finally waking up from the trance. Because loving someone who avoids intimacy is like pouring water into a bottomless pit. It will never be enough. Not until they choose to change. Not until they do the inner work. Not until they break their own cycles. And that's not your job. Your job is to protect your peace like your life depends on it, because it does. Your job is to draw a line in the sand and say, I will no longer fuel your addiction to emotional distance. If you want me, show up. If you can't, stay gone. Your energy is sacred. Don't let someone treat it like a convenience store and call it love. Listen closely, because this isn't for the faint-hearted. This is for the ones who gave everything. The ones who broke themselves open trying to be enough for someone who couldn't even stay consistent for a week. You need to hear this like thunder in your bones. Avoiders don't come back because of your love. They come back when your silence screams louder than your begging ever could. You think they'll return if you just love them harder, if you stay understanding, if you stay calm, if you forgive them again and again. But all that ever did was teach them one thing: you'll always be there. And let me be real with you. There is nothing more dangerous than being predictable to someone who abuses your emotional availability. You've been giving them unconditional love while they've been giving you conditional effort. 1 minute they're present, the next gone. One day they say they're just confused, and the next they're liking photos of someone else while you're still staring at a chat thread that hasn't moved in days. And you tell yourself they need space. You tell yourself maybe they're healing. You tell yourself maybe they're just scared of how deep it feels. Stop. That's not fear. That's convenience. They come close when they want attention. They vanish when it demands effort. They say the right words to reel you back in. But where are the actions? Where's the consistency? Where's the emotional accountability? They don't come back for love. They come back for control. Because love would mean they had to show up every day. Love would mean facing themselves. Love would mean choosing vulnerability over ego. And most avoidants aren't built for that. Not unless something forces them to evolve. You think your loyalty will change them? No, it just teaches them that disappearing is a strategy that works. That pulling away brings them closer to the very control they crave. And here's what they never tell you. Avoiders don't truly miss you when you're still emotionally accessible. They miss the feeling of control. They miss the attention. They miss the fact that you were their emotional home and they never had to build one for themselves. But when do they actually feel something? When the silence hits, when the door is closed, when their name disappears from your tongue and your energy stops knocking on their soul. They feel the absence. They feel the power shift. They feel the grip slipping, because silence, when rooted in power, is the most deafening sound in the world to someone who's used to being chased. And that's what they never expect from you. They expect texts. They expect softness. They expect explanations, second chances, and you waiting in the shadows for their next moment of weakness. But when you give them nothing, not out of bitterness, but because you finally see the game for what it is, they spiral. They check your stories. They linger on your page. They send that hey text at 11:34 p.m. like it means anything. They act confused, like you're the one who switched up, but you didn't switch up. You woke up. You stopped feeding a connection that only survived because you kept it alive with your emotional CPR. You stopped responding to crumbs like they were meals. You stopped calling their avoidance space when really it was abandonment. They don't come back when you love harder. They come back when your silence forces them to hear their own emptiness echoing. But let me tell you the truth they'll never admit. Avoidants aren't used to being cut off. They're used to being waited on. They're used to controlling the emotional tempo of the relationship. They decide when to pull back. They decide when to reappear. They decide what you get and when you get it. But the second you go still, go silent, go sovereign, they lose control. And avoidance without control, that's when the cracks start to show. That's when the ghosts come back. Not because they've transformed, but because they can't believe their anchor got up and left without making a scene. They come back when they realize you're no longer emotionally rentable. When they realize your soul isn't an open house they can visit when they're lonely. When they realize you boarded up the windows, locked the door, and started building peace without them. And that silence isn't just absence. It's accountability. It makes them sit with their own dysfunction. It makes them hear the sound of a connection that finally stopped begging. It makes them realize they can't just wander in and out of your life like it's a vacation home, but here's the raw, real part you need to prepare for. When they come back, they won't say what you expect. They won't say, I'm sorry. They won't say, I hurt you. They'll say, I've been thinking about you. Like that erases the months of silence. They'll say, I miss your energy. They'll say, how have you been? They'll test the waters because they're not sure if you're really done. They're hoping there's still a window open. They're hoping the silence was temporary, not transformative. And that's your moment, not to rage, not to punish, but to stay rooted in the peace that cost you your past self. You don't have to block them. You don't have to curse them, but you do have to respect the growth you earned through fire. Because if you let them back too soon, if you open that door before they've changed their foundation, you're not starting fresh. You're just hitting replay on the same pain. And you've outgrown that. You didn't go silent just to hear them call your name. You went silent to heal the part of you that used to tremble at their absence. You went silent to rewrite the story where you're no longer the seeker but the chooser. They come back when your silence reflects strength, not loneliness, not pain, power. Because when your silence is sacred, when it's laced with clarity, dignity, and fire, they feel something they can't explain, not regret. Loss, real loss, because they didn't lose someone who begged. They lost someone who became untouchable. And that right there is when the game ends. And you win. Let's stop sugarcoating this. So let's rip the mask off and expose it for what it really is. You think the avoidant walked away because of something you did. You think they backed off because maybe you were too intense, too emotional, too loving, too available. But here's the truth that'll slap the illusions right out of your mind. They didn't leave because of you. They left because your consistency forced them to face what they spent their whole life avoiding. See, avoidants don't run from you. They run from the mirror your love becomes. They run from the closeness. They run from the raw, unfiltered reality of being seen. Because your emotional availability, your vulnerability, your presence, it shines a light on their shadows, and they can't stand in that light for too long without burning. You were consistent. You were steady. You were honest about your emotions. You didn't play games. You didn't pull back. You didn't make them guess. And guess what? That terrified them, not because it was wrong, but because it was real. Avoidants crave connection just like anyone else, but they've been trained, hardwired to associate intimacy with danger. So when you show up consistently with warmth and openness and truth, it breaks their nervous system. It rattles their inner cage. Because everything in their past told them, if someone gets too close, I lose control. If someone really sees me, I'll be judged, rejected, abandoned. So what do? They push away the very thing they want. They pull back from the very thing that could heal them. They run from the presence they secretly crave and then blame you for coming on too strong. That's not your fault. That's their fear speaking in code. They don't say, I'm terrified of being loved because it feels unsafe. They say, I need space. They don't say, I never learned how to receive affection without shutting down. They say, you're too much. They don't say, your consistency is confronting the part of me I buried. They say, I'm not ready for a relationship right now. But deep down, the truth is screaming they don't know how to sit with something steady because their whole life was built on instability. You didn't do anything wrong. You did what healthy people do. You communicated. You showed up. You didn't play the manipulation game. You didn't hide behind silence. You didn't bait them. You were real. And that is exactly what triggered their wounds. Because to someone who's lived in emotional chaos, real love doesn't feel soothing. It feels threatening. It feels foreign. And people don't trust what they don't recognize. They trust the pain they know, not the peace they don't. That's why they ghost you and still stalk your page. That's why they vanish, but don't block you. That's why they go cold, then act shocked when you finally pull away. Because your love felt like home, but they never learned how to live in a home without expecting it to collapse. So instead of staying and building with you, they sabotage it before it gets too real. Because if they leave first, they don't have to risk you leaving them. If they shut down first, they don't have to feel the terror of being fully open. If they end it now, they don't have to endure the unknown of true intimacy. And you sit there blaming yourself. You think maybe you overwhelmed them. Maybe you came off too emotional. Maybe you asked for too much. Maybe your needs were too loud. But no, you weren't too much. You were just enough. But for someone who wasn't enough for themselves, that felt unbearable. You were the reflection they didn't want to see, the mirror they couldn't handle, because your consistency didn't just offer them love, it exposed their limitations. So what did they do? They withdrew. They turned your softness into pressure. They turned your honesty into neediness. They turned your stability into a threat, not because you were wrong, but because they weren't ready to be right with themselves. And let me tell you this so it carves into your soul. Your consistency is not the problem. It's the proof you've grown. It's the evidence that you're ready for a real relationship. It's the sign that you've evolved past the games and the ghosts and the toxic patterns. The fact that you were clear about your intentions, that you didn't hide your heart, that you loved without keeping score, that you gave them the benefit of the doubt until the doubt became undeniable. That's your strength. And if they couldn't handle that, let them go. Because if someone can't stand in the presence of healthy love, that's not your cue to shrink. That's your cue to shine brighter, to stay steady, to hold your emotional boundaries like a warrior, to refuse to abandon yourself just to make someone else comfortable in their chaos. Don't you dare dim your emotional truth just because someone with emotional avoidance couldn't hold it. Don't twist yourself into silence just to protect someone who's allergic to intimacy. Don't second guess your ability to love just because they disappeared when it got real. Their avoidance wasn't about you. It was about the storm inside of them that they never learned how to calm. It was about the battles they never faced, the patterns they never broke, the parts of themselves they never dared to meet. You did everything right. You stayed grounded. You stayed emotionally present. You loved from the front, not the shadows. You were consistent, and that scared the hell out of them. Because you didn't make love a game. You made it clear. You made it honest. You made it sacred. And people who only know how to survive in chaos, they don't know what to do with sacred. They leave it before it breaks them open. So let them walk. Let them run. Let them hide. But you don't retreat. You don't get smaller. You don't stop being consistent just because someone couldn't match it. Because the person who's ready for you, they won't be afraid of your presence. They won't flinch at your clarity. They won't disappear when it gets deep. They'll step up. They'll stay. They'll see that your consistency isn't pressure, it's peace. And when that moment comes, you'll realize that the avoidant leaving wasn't your heartbreak, it was your graduation. You want to know the final key? The one that makes all the others explode into clarity like lightning cracking through the soul? Listen close, because this one isn't just about the avoidant. This one is about you rising from the ashes of every unanswered text, every I need time, every vanishing act that shattered your confidence and made you question your worth. This is the final burn of the illusion, the end of your people pleasing, the death of the version of you that was addicted to convincing someone to love you. Because here it is. If they didn't see your value when you were at your most vulnerable, your most generous, your most emotionally raw, then don't you dare offer them access to the version of you that was born in your healing. You hear me? That upgraded version of you that emerged from the silence, from the nights you cried into your own hands, from the days you couldn't recognize yourself in the mirror anymore because all you saw was someone waiting to be chosen. That version, the one rebuilding, the one who's learning to set boundaries, the one waking up to their own power, that version is sacred. And that version is not for tourists. You spent all that time giving the avoidant the best parts of you, the nurturing, the forgiveness, the second chances, the emotional clarity. You explained yourself over and over. You begged without using the word begged. You adjusted. You lowered your voice. You softened your boundaries. You made excuses for their disappearances, rationalized their coldness, labeled abandonment as space, and mistook hot and cold chaos for passion. And what did they give you in return? Silence, confusion, gaslighting, emotional ambiguity so thick you could drown in it, and then they left. Or worse, they stayed halfway. Just enough to keep you hooked. Just enough to feed on your energy while never giving you clarity, never stepping into the full power of commitment. They breadcrumbed you emotionally, and you called it love because you were starving. But now you've started to wake up. You've started to feel the cracks harden into armor. You've started to feel the fog lift and the fire inside you reignite. You've started to rebuild your sense of self. You've started to realize your vulnerability is a gift, not a weakness. You started the journey, the inner revolution, the beautiful, brutal path where you stop abandoning yourself to be enough for someone who was never ready to meet you where you stood. So now that the storm has started to settle, what happens next? The avoidant comes back. Not because they've changed, but because your energy changed. You're no longer reaching, no longer craving, no longer vibrating in lack. You're not chasing anymore, and the absence of your chase becomes a vacuum they can feel from miles away. That's when the "Hey stranger" text comes. That's when the energy shifts. That's when they test. They want to know, did you really heal, or are you just waiting for another round of the same pain? This is your test now. Because here's what most people get wrong. They think healing means forgiving and letting them back in. No. Healing means seeing exactly who they were and refusing to hand over your new piece to someone who already proved they don't know what to do with your love. They didn't respect your value when it was raw and real, so they don't deserve it now that it's refined and rare. They don't get to skip the consequences. They don't get access to the new you just because they regret the way they mishandled the old you. You bled in front of them, you broke in front of them, you waited for them, you were patient, gentle, loyal, and open, and they treated it like an option. So when they circle back, don't you dare make it easy. Let them sit in the discomfort of what they lost. Let them feel the gravity of who you are without their confusion clouding your clarity. Let them work for the right to even stand near your energy again. Not because you're bitter, not because you're cruel, but because your worth now has walls. Because now your love comes with requirements. It comes with emotional standards. It comes with non-negotiables like consistency, presence, and depth. And if they can't meet that, then their return is not a comeback. It's a test you already passed. You think you're the one who needs closure? No, they do. You already got yours the moment you stopped hoping and started healing. You got yours when you realized your heart isn't a doormat for emotionally unavailable people to wipe their feet on after stomping through your... You got yours when you learned that your love is currency, not charity. So when they come back, remember who you are now. Remember what it took to get here. Remember how you picked up your shattered self from their absence. Remember how you screamed into pillows and still showed up the next day. Remember how you cried in silence and still answered the phone for your job, your friends, your family. Remember how you loved them through their chaos? And now you love yourself through the quiet. That love you gave them, that wasn't wasted. It wasn't for them. It was proof. Proof that your heart is capable, expansive, legendary. And now it's time to reserve that love for someone who sees it and says, I will never make you question your worth again. That's what it comes down to. You're not punishing them by walking away. You're protecting the miracle you've become. You are the gift now. You are the reward. You are the peace they couldn't find because they were too busy running from the very thing that could have saved them. So let them feel the weight of their decision. Let them learn the hard way that people like you aren't replaceable. Let them feel the silence, not as punishment, but as evidence of growth. Let them feel the door stay closed, not because you're cruel, but because your soul is finally clean. You don't rise from the ashes just to invite back the spark that burned you. You rise to become untouchable, unshakable, unavailable to anything that doesn't honor the love you offer. Because once you've rebuilt yourself from their wreckage, there is no seat at your table for anyone who watched you starve and never offered you bread. Now you feast, alone if you must, but in peace, in power, in purpose. And when they knock, let them hear the sound of a healed soul that doesn't open the door for the past.